All right, y'all, welcome to Blacks with Power, the show for blacks in America who want to discover ways to harness their power in order to protect the gains won by the struggles of our ancestors and advance the cause of freedom for themselves, their family, and others. We believe that for America to be great, for America to be the more perfect union that our Constitution calls for us to be, we must have racial reconciliation in this country. And for there to be true reconciliation, blacks in America must empower themselves to compel and encourage repentance for the system and ideology of white supremacy and privilege that has betrayed the ideal of liberty and justice for all. I'm Father Jabril Ballantine, and I'll be your guide on this journey toward the America that can and should be. Thank you so much for listening. You can visit us online at blackswithpower.com. Please be sure to like our Facebook page, facebook.com/blackswithpower, and join in on the discussion. Also, you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or TuneIn. You can listen to the previous episodes, and please write a review. Then share your favorite episodes with family, with friends, because truly, brothers and sisters, all voices are needed. And so I want to hear from you. We set up a private Facebook community. You can go to blackswithpower.com/Facebook and begin to share your insights. Now, we have a lot to discuss, so let's get down to it. And before I jump into today's session, today's episode, today's interview, rather, I want to talk to you a little bit because, what we have on top is an interview that I did with Yusuf Kareem, who is the director of the manager for diversity initiatives over at the Law School Admissions Council, the people that prepare you to take and administer the LSAT. If you're going to go into law school, you need to take a LSAT. And the Law School Admissions Council does a lot of things that we're going to talk about in this episode coming up. But I want to prime you, especially against the backdrop of the news that we found out again that Betty Shelby, the officer who killed Terence Crutcher in Tulsa, Oklahoma, got off. It's a common thing that we see nowadays. Police officers get to say, I was afraid for my life, even though the man was unarmed, even though the man had his hands in the air, whatever. I guess somehow she is so bad with her gun. She's a trained officer, but she's so bad with her gun that she was afraid that Terence Crutcher would be able to reach into his car, pull out his gun, turn and shoot her before she was able to shoot him. So she had to do that preemptively to make sure that she was protected. And the problem is that the law allows for this kind of nonsense, right? The legal standards are so ambiguous that, anytime a police officer says, I'm afraid for my life, they have the right to shoot to kill. And again, they're trained not to shoot in the leg, not to shoot in the hand. They're not whatever they say. They're trained to shoot center mass and kill you. Of course, they shot Mike Brown in the head, but that's a different story, I guess, somehow, some way. Nevertheless, what I'm getting at, brothers and sisters, is that one of the major issues that we have, and you'll find from this interview with Yusuf Kareem from the Law School Advisory Council, is that we don't have enough lawyers. We don't have enough people in our community who are trained to draft law, to draft legal policy, to interpret legal policy. And so, we have people, Benjamin Crump, who's doing a yeoman's job. He's an Omega man, my brother from another fraternity, and his partner, Darryl Parks, who is my fraternity brother. We have folks like that. We have, a bunch of other folks who are carrying the lion's share of this work. And you see Ben Crump all over the country because there's so few of us. Yeah, you might say that he's gotten the notoriety from being in the Trayvon Martin trial, but it would be so much better if there were more hands on deck. But as you'll hear from this discussion with Yusuf Kareem, we are just undermanned. And so this Terence Crutcher verdict and the verdicts that will come down, we know all around are going to be examples of why we need more young brothers and sisters to enter into the legal profession. And so Yusuf is going to blow your mind with the statistics that he demonstrates. And so I want you to listen to this episode and share this episode with your friends because, like I said, brothers and sisters, all hands are needed on deck. And the times always show us, the criminal justice system always shows us, the legal system always shows us that truly, brothers and sisters, all voices are needed. And so I ask you to listen to this episode and share your thoughts on what you think about where we are and how many of us are in the legal field and what needs to happen going forward. So thank you very much. Again, blackswithpower.com/Facebook. Get in on the discussion and just subscribe to the show and enjoy this episode, enjoy this interview with Yusuf Kareem of the Law School Advisory Council. I am sitting here today with Yusuf Kareem. Yusuf Kareem is the Diversity and Inclusion Manager over at the Law School Advisory Council. Y'all may not know too much about what the Law School Advisory Council is, but I know y'all know what they do, the LSAT, the LSAT. All y'all who are thinking about becoming lawyers, all y'all who have become lawyers, know that dreaded test, the LSAT. And so I'm sitting with Yusuf Kareem, who helps get black people, brown people, yellow people, red people, all engaged in the field of law and usher them through the process of becoming law school students. Yusuf, how are you today, brother?
I am great. I am great. So blessed, man. I want to say thank you very much for the invitation, for having me here this afternoon on this great day to discuss what it means to get prepared for law school and what it means to be an attorney in the United States of America.
Yeah, man.
So first and foremost, yeah. So I just want to say thank you for the invite. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, man, I really appreciate you accepting the invite because this is powerful for the people that we serve here with Blacks with Power, man. It's like you said, what does it mean to be a lawyer in the United States of America? I mean, that's a poignant question. And I think I'm going to open it up for you to answer that question just by talking a little bit about you, how you got into this work, why the Law School Advisory Council even has a diversity inclusion initiative, and how that all dovetails together between your work and who you are as a person.
Yeah, Yusuf Abdul Kareem. I've been with the Law School Admission Council for 5 years now. Before this, I worked for another nonprofit in DC. And coming here, the big thing for me was how to make an impact on the lives of students that wanted to pursue a legal career or an opportunity to go to law school, but didn't necessarily know how to go about it. By our sort of nature and design, we are a testing company.
Right.
But all testing companies are not created equal. I will say that. Not all of our sister organizations or just sort of other organizations in our marketplace don't have the same focus and dedication, commitment to diversity that we have at the Law School Admission Council. So that was one of the things that really, really kind of resonated with me as someone who has a desire to make an impact on the lives of students that are the next generation of leaders, I would say.
So you gave me a whole bunch, when we were talking offline, you gave me a whole bunch of numbers and statistics about the importance of this. What does the landscape look like, and why is it? Because like you said, not all testing companies, testing agencies are as focused on diversity as the Law School Admissions Council. I said advisory. Admissions Council is focused on it. And I know the numbers plays a huge role into that. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So if you look across all of the different sectors in the country, so whether it be sort of pharma, whether it be the financial sector, tech, the IT, which is huge now, law still seems to be one of the least diverse sectors in America. So if you look at financial advisors, for instance, the latest data comes out and says that 79% of all of the financial advisors in America are Caucasian or white, right? And only 8% of all of the financial advisors in the United States are African American,
wow,
right? So then you can break that number down into the other sort of, diverse groups. But if you look at law, I mean, law is just out there sort of is an outlier to the effect of 88% of all of the attorneys in the United States are white.
Oh, wow.
Right. And predominantly those are white men. Right. So there are roughly 1.3 lawyers in our country. And this is based on the latest data
1.3 million?
Put out by the ABA. Yeah. 1.3 million. So of that, 65% are male and 35% are female.
Okay.
So white men making up the largest majority of that. And so the only way to kind of combat that is to create opportunities and programs for students that have been traditionally underrepresented in the law school, to get them to apply early and to not only apply, but to also be successful and matriculate to a law school of
So
their
you
choice.
say 88% of all
Mm-hmm.
lawyers in America
Mm-hmm.
are white.
Mm-hmm. That's correct. Yeah.
Lord have mercy.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and if you think about that, right? If you think about what that, so let's sort of unpack that
Right. That's what I,
and
yeah.
say, what does it mean, right? So if you think about law, right, lawyers have historically been presidents, right?
Right.
They have now been first ladies. If you look at, First Lady, former First Lady Michelle Obama, she was an attorney,
Right.
right? If you look at governors, if you look at legislators, if you look at prosecutors, defendants, if you look at CEOs, if you look at general counsels of companies, if you look at, across every sector of our nation, there's a lawyer in a position of power,
Right.
right? And so, what does that mean as we begin to sort of move from being a majority state, right, which is, minorities right now make up we're not the majority sort of population, right? But by 2055, there's data that's put out by the Census Bureau that says that we're going to, we won't be a single race sort of majority country
Right.
anymore. Right. So then that has huge impacts on the way that, cities are governed, states are governed, and how we are governed nationally and federally. So if we don't have people in position and at the table to sort of influence and to write laws that impact the societies that they ultimately serve, we're going to be at a huge disadvantage. And there's no way that we can sort of affect the kind of change that we want to see moving forward.
Yeah, it's interesting, and this is exactly why I wanted you on here to talk to our listeners, man, because it's interesting as the thing came out, the story came out. I think it was in the Root, but people were talking about how Black Lives Matter. People, you're not seeing a whole bunch of protests anymore all over the place, but
Mm-hmm.
how they have shifted to trying to address policy, right? And that's
Yeah,
the critical
yeah,
thing
and
when you talk about lawyers and 88% of them
mm-hmm,
being white, right?
mm-hmm,
Lawyers are the
mm-hmm,
ones who draft policy across the board,
yeah,
whether it be
yeah,
social policy, whether it be corporate policy, and the way that affects
mm-hmm,
society and the way that affects
mm-hmm,
culture, across the board in terms of how people interact with people, how corporations
yes,
interact with people, how agencies interact with people,
yes,
how entities interact with people, how law enforcement interacts with people. All of that is
exactly.
ultimately determined by an attorney.
By yes, and that's why. So, and here's a real life example of how having African Americans and diverse sort of attorneys in position of power impacts the larger community. So if you look at what happened, the unfortunate incidents in Baltimore with Freddie Gray,
Right.
with Freddie Gray. So if you look at the prosecutor for that city, I can't remember her name off the top of my head,
For some
but
reason,
she's an African
Mosby.
American
Yeah,
woman.
I think it's
Yeah,
Mosby. Yeah.
yeah, yes, Mosby. Yes, you're absolutely right. So, had she not been in that position, we would have gotten the same thing that we have gotten in other jurisdictions, right? So, she went out and said, hey, these police officers have done something wrong and they should at least be brought to trial.
Right.
Right. In other situations, there were never sort of any I would say punitive or real sort of effects or impact on the officers that were in those situations. So I think to me that's a concrete, tangible example of when we have positions of influence, we can impact and affect the kind of change that we want to see
Yeah.
in our community.
Yeah, and that's a critical thing, for folks, in their collegiate life that are preparing themselves for leadership roles. You see
Exactly.
folks, it's so beautiful to see, brothers and sisters again engaging social causes. You know what I mean? It feels
Mm-hmm.
like we've been
Mm-hmm.
dormant for a while, but now people are engaging social causes again and getting involved in what's going on. And one of the key ways to get involved in what's going on, one of the critical things that we need, clearly, I mean, you didn't even tell us the percentage of black lawyers. Like, I'm afraid to ask. Like,
It's 4%.
4%.
4.1 to be exact.
4.1% of the lawyers in this country are
Mm-hmm.
black. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yep.
when we screaming at the top of our lungs about Black Lives Mattering, and trying to get
Mm-hmm.
people to hear us, not just when we getting shot, but trying to get us to hear us
Yeah.
before we get shot. There's
Mm-hmm.
only 4.1% of the American law professionals
Yep.
who even
Yep.
have a cultural relevance, a cultural stake in the situation. We're still, with 88% being white, we are still at the mercy of white people's benevolence, looking for them to care about our
Mm-hmm.
situation rather than
Mm-hmm.
us being in a
Mm-hmm.
place where we can take stock in our own future and draft policy that affects our own future, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's really the mission and focus of this organization, right? So a lot of people, unfortunately, don't see all of the good work that we do in terms of reaching out and creating pipeline programs to provide opportunities for students that have historically been underrepresented in the legal profession, right? And so through these efforts and through these pipeline efforts, we are affecting the kind of change that we want to see. But I think the thing that a lot of people have to keep in mind with diversity programs in general is that you can't really just kind of focus solely on the numbers, right? Just in a sense of, this is a systemic problem that's going to take a while to address and to combat and to fix, right? So it's not something that, you can kind of, invest 2 or 3 years and then say, hey, we've seen the kind of change that we want to see, right? I mean, if you look at the educational continuum, we've recognized that we have to start in high school, really. And some data and research shows that there's an educational divide that starts at fourth grade, depending on what school system or jurisdiction you're in. Students are from fourth grade on sort of that gap is established,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it only gets perpetuated even worse as they move through if there aren't sort of checks and balances, or if there aren't teachers that kind of invest in the students when they see potential. And there's so many other real life situations going on at home that unfortunately adversely impact our students, so that on a day-to-day basis they have a hard time sort of learning, right? If your lights are out at home, how is it possible that you're going to come and be able to focus on what your teacher is telling you to do in your algebra
Right.
class, right? So it's almost like you have to be a super student and deal with all of the social issues that you have going on at home, and then come to this academic setting and be phenomenal, right, and
Right.
exceptional for someone to kind of see you and then say, well, hey, hold on, this student has a lot of potential, let's invest, right? So and far too often that isn't happening. So there are leaks, if you will, in that pipeline. So students are really, going from, the high school to prison pipeline. That's unfortunately a real thing.
And I know that's one of the things that you are concerned about, Yusuf, and the Law School Admission Council is concerned about in terms of, discoverlaw.org. We want you all to
Hmm.
discover law, so go to discoverlaw.org and kind of
Thank
figure
you.
out some of
Yes, we
those
do.
things that we're talking about and we're unpacking here. But tell us a little bit
Hmm.
about what is the Law School Admission Council doing to repair the holes in that pipeline?
Well, so I mean, for us, we understand that we have to take a targeted sort of strategic approach, right? We definitely want to create programs for students as early as possible, right? But like every scarce resource in the world, right? We have a limited amount of capacity,
Mm-hmm.
right? So for us, we see the us being able sort of to impact and be the most impactful from the high school level forward, right? So our traditional target audience is high school students first and second year students that are in, college. So whether they are in a traditional 4-year program or if they're at a junior college or community college, they're in our sort of target audience too. And then, but I mean, the website itself is for everyone, right?
Okay.
Who is interested in discovering opportunities, right? That's just our target audience. So, but I mean, we can, we certainly have information for students that, or even graduates that are kind of interested in going to law school but want to find out more about it. So we have a number of different features on there to help students, where they are, kind of get ready and get prepared. And then we work with sister organizations like CLEO, which is a Council for Legal Opportunity in Education.
Okay.
Legal Opportunity in Education, right? That's a great organization that we've worked with for a very, very long time, and they focus primarily on students that have already graduated and that are sort of in that next rung or about to graduate from college.
Okay.
So that's where we've been successful. We have a number of different programs that we run here. The first one for high school students it's called the Discover Law Student Ambassadors Program. We're in the process of piloting that in Philadelphia with 3 high schools. And then we have a community college program where we go into community colleges and have sessions and seminars and talk to students about discoverlaw.org and what it means to prepare for law school. And because of and sort of the one of the benefits and one of the things that came out of that program was there's a California program called the 2+2+3 Pathways program, where community college students from 24 different community colleges in California now have an opportunity to, start at a community college,
Okay.
go to a traditional school for the next 2 years, and then go on to law school. And that, is sort of one of the results of some of the work that we've done in California
Wonderful. Thanks be to God.
with,
Yeah.
with our community college program. And then we have 2 other programs that we run through with our member law schools. So the first one being the Discover Law Pre-Law Undergraduate Scholars Program. And that has been around since 2002. And since that time, we've had 23 different law schools host the program. And essentially what we do is students that are interested can apply. And it's, the whole program is supposed to model what the first year of law school is like.
Okay.
So starting with the competitive application process, right? So you have to submit a resume. You have to submit a personal statement. You have to get letters of recommendation. You have to have good grades. And then you can apply for the program. We have 5 sites around the country right now. So we have one in Orange County at Chapman University, Wisconsin University, Maine University, University of Maine. Where else are we? We have one in St. Louis, and we have another one. And that's 1, 2, 3. Oh, at University of Texas at Austin.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is actually in collaboration with an HBCU, Houston Tillotson, in Austin,
Okay.
Texas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And so the students are there for 4 weeks. They get a stipend. They go to class. They're taught by real law school professors. They're with a group of 20 students, sometimes 25 or 30 students, and they really get the exposure and the what it really means to be a law student, right? So they're writing briefs, they're writing essays, they're learning, the CREAC models, they're learning how to debrief a case, they're learning all of the things that they wouldn't have an opportunity to, right? But for this program.
So how
And we've
competitive
had,
is that program? How many slots are there? What year do you have to
so
be to get in? What's the process
yeah,
like?
yeah, yeah. So I mean, the program is pretty competitive, right? I will say that. We have the number of students that are the slots, I'd say, vary from program to
Okay.
program, but minimum of 20 at every
At each
program.
school. Okay.
Some program, yeah, at
So
each
you're talking
school.
about maybe about
Sometimes
100 slots total.
exactly, right? So 100 or maybe like Sometimes schools will have up to 30,
Okay.
so it will vary,
Right.
and sometimes they will have 25. So it varies from program to program. But I mean, essentially, the target audience for that program are freshmen and
Okay.
sophomores, right? Because for us, early preparation is one of the focal points of discoverlaw.org, of one of the goals, right? So we want them to prepare early because after completing the program, they then have the opportunity to go back to their home institution and address the things that they have sort of figured out, the opportunities that they have discovered for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So, case in point, if you go through the program, after as a result of it, you realize that, hey, I need to do more reading or critical thinking. I need to read more so I can think critically. What kind of classes can I take when I get back to
Right.
campus? Right. So then if you go and you go through the program, you're like, hey, I haven't taken philosophy before, but I know that philosophy is something that's going to force me to read, it's going to force me to write, and it's going to force me to think critically. Those are the kind of takeaways that we want students to be able to have. Right. And then also as a result of the program, they get they get to take the test for free. So they get a free waiver,
Oh, so they got to
right?
take the
That
LSAT for
allows
free.
exactly. So for us, it's about investing in students that have self-identified as wanting to do
So
more,
then, in other words,
right?
if you get into this program, you get a stipend, you get paid to go. It's a decent
Hmm.
stipend. 'Cause you know that's
It's a
what
thousand
you
dollars.
know that's what kids are
It's a
concerned about. They want to know
Yeah,
how that
yeah.
stipend works. So they
I
get
mean,
paid to
yeah,
go.
yeah.
You get paid to
They get
go,
it.
and you get a fee waiver to take the test once you grad.
Yeah,
You know, in your senior year, I imagine your senior year of
yeah.
college,
Your junior year.
junior
So
year.
the stipend is yeah. So your stipend is $1,000.
Okay.
Right? So, I mean,
For the four
is that the
weeks,
end
yeah.
all be
For
all?
four
Yeah, for the
weeks,
4 weeks.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's
for 4 weeks. I mean, everything else is paid for. You're not paying rent. I mean, we're not going to pay your phone bill or anything like
right,
that, but your time there is covered.
right.
So, and then also with the fee waiver is good for 2 years.
Nice.
Right. And so with that fee waiver, you get to take the exam twice. You also get to, all of your application fees are waived, right? Which is sometimes can be a barrier to entry because students don't necessarily have the ability to pay for the application
Wait, the
fees.
application
Uh,
fees to law school? Oh
yeah,
wow. Oh
yeah.
wow. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so like any other, school, whether it be business school, whether it be medical school,
Right.
whether it be just applying to, regular college, there are application
Yeah.
fees that are
And if they
attached.
go through your
Yeah,
scholars
yeah,
program, and if they go to
exactly.
discoverlaw.org, find out about the scholars
Yep,
program, get accepted, they'll get a
yep,
stipend, they'll get
yep.
their fee waived for their LSAT as well as their
Hmm.
application fees for law school waived.
Yes, yes. And I mean, and that to me is, another level of investment to ensure that they are successful in whatever they do. And quite honestly, the goal isn't to necessarily produce more attorneys with this program, right? So we count those that come out of the program and say, hey, you know what? Like, thank you very much for the opportunity, but I've decided as a result of the program, I'm not going to go to law school.
Mm-hmm.
That to us is a win too,
Right. Okay.
right? Because the one of the goals is to set people up to be successful, right? And we see this program as a way to give them the tools that they need to succeed once they get in law school,
Right.
right? And we have a lot of data that shows that as a result of the program, students are way more prepared as a result of coming through. And I think that that is really so it says a lot, and it's a testament to the quality of the programs, right? Thanks to our member law schools, but because the program is only 4 weeks, it's 4 weeks at a time when in some cases they're not even sure who they are because they're young students,
Right.
they're relatively young,
Right.
right? They're freshmen or like
Right.
sophomores, right? So like a sophomore this year is a different person when he gets ready to, or she gets ready to graduate from from
Yeah,
uh,
but
from
you
from
know, it's
undergrad, right?
powerful to me, Yusef, because they're trying to figure it out. You know, I
Exactly,
mean, everything in
exactly.
culture is tilting back towards social justice, social activism, social engagement.
Hmm.
You know, you see
Hmm.
all the hip hop artists coming out now with their albums dealing with social issues, and a lot of these students are trying to figure out how they get involved, what's their place, how they
Hmm.
find, and law is a possibility. And like you said, if you
Oh, for
go to
sure.
discoverlaw.org, it's not about, oh, you got to, if you go through this, you have to become a lawyer. This is about
No, it's not.
figure out, is law
Hmm.
the way that I want to engage myself in the issues of today? Is the legal
Exactly.
profession?
And
Yeah.
yep, and not only that, but it's also sort of discovering opportunities that are available to you, right? I think for many of us, myself included, I didn't know any lawyers growing up, right? And so the only lawyers that I saw were lawyers on TV or lawyers at a courthouse. But there's so many different fields of law that lawyers practice, and so for a lot of us, it's really about the exposure, right, to new opportunities and new ideas, and you never know like what could be the spark,
Right.
right, that sort of says, hey, I had no idea that this was possible for me,
Right.
right? So it's about having conversations that say and giving them opportunities to see people who look like them doing things that they can, if they want to, achieve,
Right.
right? And then also with the program, I mean, you just are exposed to other students. So it's almost like we're trying to create a community of students that, place a lot of stock in higher education, right? So we've had students or some of our alums that aren't attorneys have gone into PhD programs. They've gone into master's programs. They've
Okay.
gone into MBA programs. And we still count all of them as a
Because
win,
you help them
right?
find their
Because
way.
for exactly. And for us, it's about instilling the desire and the pursuit of excellence in higher education, whether it be in law, whether it be in through a PhD program, whether it be an MBA program. We want you to take it further than you probably would have had you not uh, participated in the program.
Right, right. So let me ask you this. Kind of personal because I have a niece who's going to Howard. She's brilliant, man. She
Hmm.
and she's socially engaged. She wears the throwback stuff, and the fat chains
Oh
and stuff
yeah,
like that. I was like,
yeah,
man, we used to
yeah,
do that back in the
yeah,
'80s, man. Like,
yeah.
but she
Oh
she's
yeah.
brilliant. She's going to Howard for communications. And
Hmm.
yeah, of course, communications fees well into law in terms of being able to
Yep.
articulate and so on and so forth. So if you're a
Hmm.
student, going into your first year, going into your second year, even you said that sweet spot of where you all serve.
Yep.
What would have to happen over your college tenure, over your time in college, to best
Hmm.
position yourself to choose and be chosen by the right law school?
Mm. Yeah, no, that's a great question, and I think that it's a question that um, many times students come to later in the process, and where they don't have as much sort of flexibility to empower themselves, right, and to kind of drive the application process. And I say that because as a student, I think from especially for those that don't quite know like what they want to do after college,
Right.
right? I think then in that case you have to sort of expose yourself to a bunch of different things, right? Until you figure out like what your niche is per se,
Right.
right? So, and you can do that through a number of ways. You can do that through internships. You can do that through visiting, talking to your professors about what some of your interests are. And sometimes, they will put you in, they'll plug you per se, right? So they'll put you in contact with one of their colleagues that knows, hey, this person does this. Go talk to that person and see what opportunities they
Mm-hmm.
have.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that I always advise all students to do is focus on your grades no matter
Right.
what,
Of course.
right?
Yeah.
So the best thing that you can do really is to make good grades. If you make good grades, whether you know early whether you want to go to law school or you come to it later in your college career, you're set either way,
Right. Uh
right?
huh.
So make good grades, take challenging classes, and really kind of push yourself to not only sort of be at school, but to lead while you're at school,
Right.
right? So join clubs, right? And once you join a club, take a year to kind of maybe not even a year, a semester to understand how the club works, right? And then the next year or next semester, join the leadership of that club, right? Because as an attorney, there people are going to look to you to be a leader of the community, and law schools want to see that you've actually demonstrated, successfully demonstrated that you have the ability, the desire, right, to lead. And I think that's a key takeaway and this isn't just for students that are interested in law school. This is for all students,
Right.
right? So I tell students all the time, like if you want to affect change, you have to be at the table. And if you're not at the table, then a lot of times you're on the menu, right? And if you're on the menu, then you're going to keep getting what you got, right? Or you're going to be had for dinner, worst case scenario.
Right.
So, so always focus on grades first and foremost. Number two, try to do a bunch of internships, as many as possible, until you figure out what your niche is, and then go to it. You don't, and the beauty of law is that you don't have to major in a lot of people think that political science, or you have to be a pre-law major.
Right.
Law is a discipline where you can come to it from any vantage point. Right. So you can be in business and come to it. You can be in hospitality and come to it. You can be in science and come to it. You can be in engineering and come to it, because law is such a vast, practice. And then there's so many different practice areas that you can find your niche based on what your undergraduate sort of degree was in. So I would tell her to focus on getting her grades right. Definitely visit discoverlaw.org, right, and look for summer pre-law programs that she can, do during the summertime. We have a number of them here on our website, but then there are also others that we previously funded that aren't under our funding cycle now, that are out there too.
Okay.
So like Florida State has a big one. They take 60 students every summer, right? And so that's a huge program.
Oh, wow.
And people come to it from all over. Chicago Kent, up in Chicago, is another program that we previously funded. Up in SUNY Buffalo, there's another program up there that we used to fund. So there are a number of opportunities for students that are interested in pursuing, a law or pre-law summer program. It's just you have to get out there and really kind of pound the pavement and talk to your pre-law advisors, right? That's another resource that they have at their disposal as well, right? A lot of times the pre-law advisors are in contact with other pre-law advisors from around the country. So you have this national network of resources that are at your disposal. The key there is to just tap into it, right? And like every resource, it will only work as good as you sort of make it work for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Man, I appreciate that. Yeah, I like I said, I appreciate that for the many out there, brothers and sisters out there that are brilliant and may not think of the legal profession as a profession for them. Maybe because they think that I don't want to be a practicing lawyer.
Of course,
you don't have to be a practicing lawyer to get a law degree, and
that's true.
And a law degree is advantageous for you when you're not a practicing lawyer.
No matter exactly. And I mean, at the end of the day, if once you have graduated, the degree is yours to do with what you will. Right? There's no one that's going to say, "Hey, you have to take the bar and pass the bar," right? And what we found that for a lot of lawyers or attorneys or law students of color, they have they have this desire, this huge desire to give back and to make a difference in the lives of students that are coming up behind them. So what we found is that a lot of times they create pipeline programs, or they work in law school admissions, or they work at nonprofit organizations, or they maybe work in nonprofit organizations that focus on a particular issue like immigration, civil rights, social justice, right? So I mean, you don't necessarily have to go to a big firm, right, in order to be like the quintessential attorney.
Right.
You can do with your degree whatever you want. Essentially, what a law degree does is really just kind of helps you think differently, right? And it helps you sort of identify problems and create solutions to those problems, right? And draft policies and, and legislation. And so it just gives you a wide breadth of opportunities that you might not even, known were possible
Yeah,
for you.
and it's
So
like
that's
even
why,
as you
yeah.
talk about that, it's like even the pursuit of and the discovery of a law
Hmm.
profession, a legal profession, um,
Hmm.
also helps to empower your time on campus as a campus leader. Because you start to
Exactly.
think
Exactly.
differently in how you approach the things that you are addressing, the issues you are confronting on
Yeah.
campus. And it
Yeah.
allows
And,
you to
and,
deal
and
with the administration on a different level.
exactly. Exactly. The administrator. So if you look at, your campus, and then if you look at your community,
Right.
right, the things that are happening, outside your immediate campus in that community, and then you can look, statewide, state,
Right.
and then you look nationally, and I mean, lawyers have an impact. I think that, it's important to understand the role that lawyers play, and even in movement. So if you go back to the times where, to like Martin Luther King, and they were marching, they always had a lawyer on speed
Oh
dial or a
yeah.
number. So all of the protesters had the number of the attorney to call, so that when they got arrested, they had someone to come bail them out. Right. And I think that's important. So when we move beyond just sort of, marching, and then to actually sort of creating policy, we need those attorneys to be there, right? To
Right.
have and lead and influence that discussion, so that they can be impactful and sort of and affect the kind of change that we want to see in our communities, in our states, and in our country at
Yeah,
large.
yeah, brother. Yeah, that is powerful, and I appreciate that a whole lot because that's what we're about
Oh, it's my
at
pleasure.
Blacks with Power. So thank you so much for joining us because
Oh, it's my pleasure.
we got to get people to thinking critically like that about the movement, about where we are as a society and how we get to the
Hmm.
places that we want to be. How do we protect the legacy that our ancestors fought and died for? How do we advance the
Hmm.
cause of freedom for ourselves, for our families, for others down into posterity? And so we want to hear
Hmm.
from you. Blackswithpower.com is the website. Go to blackswithpower.com/Facebook. Become a part of the Facebook group where we begin to unpack these ideas on a deeper level, start to give some actionable steps for how to go forward, provide you with resources in order to empower yourselves and affect change in the world. And then we want to hear from you. Leave your review for this podcast. Leave your review for the other episodes. Go to visit discoverlaw.org. Find out more about the Law School Admissions Council and what they are doing. It's more than just a test, y'all. It is more than
Yeah.
just driving you nuts with that test. They are actually doing a ton of things, myriad things to help you prepare for the test, but also to help you along the way throughout your collegiate career, throughout your law school career. And so be sure to like the Facebook page as well, facebook.com/blackswithpower. Subscribe to the show, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, TuneIn. A charge to keep we have, brothers and sisters. That's what the ancestors used to say all the time. A charge to keep we have. A God to glorify. A never-dying soul to save and fit it for the sky. We have come a long way. Yes, indeed. Thanks be to God. We as a people have accomplished a great deal. But we ain't there yet. So let us march on till victory is won. Live with power.